Welcome to your Daily 5 for Thursday, July 27th, 2023. If you remember, not too long ago, I had done a 5 talking about the fact that a lot of people were declaring social media to be dead after Twitter introduced its rate limiting, which I don't know if that's actually still in effect or not, but I think they reversed it mostly, or they expanded it so it's not as big a deal. But in any event, people then immediately said, that's it, it's all over with. Elon Musk has driven the final nail in the coffin to social media. Nobody cares anymore, and we're past it. And then Meta launched its Threads product and got a record number of signups. And suddenly, a lot of people who were saying social media was dead were saying, oh, Threads is great. Maybe Threads shows that this space isn't dead after all. And now that engagement appears, from what we can tell, to have at least not stayed at the adoption levels, which was always going to be the case. It was never going to be able to maintain that level of engagement no matter what happened, unless there was some major event that they somehow, I don't know. There was no realistic way to expect Threads to stay at the level that it was. But regardless, now that those numbers appear to have dropped through the floor, or at least are significantly lower in terms of actual user engagement on the platform, now suddenly, guess what? We're starting to hear variations on social media is dead. Not using the same words, of course, but with the same general idea. For example, I saw an article yesterday on Wired that said, social media has run out of fresh ideas. That's the headline. And then immediately in the sentence underneath, there was this text. Social media companies are throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. And to me, that's an interesting set of sentences and thoughts to put together, because to me they're actually somewhat contradictory. So when that article says that companies are throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, I actually think that that is a possible, I'm not going to say for sure, because I don't know everything, but that feels like to me that there is clearly still an appetite for some form of what we have classically seen as social media. Now, by the way, you're going to hear me talking about similar things on the next late night in the second part. So if you start to have a sense of deja vu when you get to that part 2 of the next late night, you're not. It's because this is something that we covered more in depth on that late night. But I did want to mention it because I happened to see this Wired article, and it's just been fresh on my mind. I don't think people are past the idea of social media. I don't think that's what it is. I think there is still an inherent desire for many people to be able to share their ideas and their thoughts and what's going on, sometimes unnecessarily so. Right? There's always the oversharing problem, and I don't think that's ever going to go away in any facet of life, whether it's digital or in real life. But I think people still do want some form of what social media currently is. Now, it may not look or be exactly like it is today. That certainly could change. And actually, what I think is maybe some of the turbulence we're seeing, even though a lot of these services do appear to be mildly variable clones of each other. I mean, they're all kind of basically vertical feeds where people post things and other people react to them. But the fact that those things keep getting adopted and people keep going back to them, we haven't seen one launch where there's just nobody. We haven't seen, for example, if Threads had come out, if Threads had launched and had a miserable to non-existent adoption rate, it would make me think a little bit more solidly that, yeah, maybe people are past this. Maybe people don't want this anymore. And I think part of the reason that Threads numbers have cratered is because people eventually realized they were using a Meta product. I think there's a big aspect to that, and people are overlooking it. They're just interpreting that as, people were excited about social because it was a new product, and then they got rid of it because they realized they didn't need it. I don't know that that's entirely the case. I think some of it is that, certainly, and some of it, if not a lot of it, is the fact that people realize pretty quickly, oh yeah, this is still the company that brought us Facebook and Instagram, where it's very clear that they're just trying to suck up as much data and sell us off as quickly as possible. So some of that might be a buyer's remorse kind of thing. But I think the fact that we're seeing networks that continually launch, that we see people trying to figure out what the next Twitter, if you want to use that term for it, is, shows that there is still a desire for it. So I don't know that social media will ever be back to what it was, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when it was, when people were really engaged with it and embraced it. It may end up that it shatters into several small types of networks that are far more focused on individual communities, and that's not necessarily even a bad thing. That's what bulletin boards used to be, for people who are old enough to remember them. But I definitely don't think that social media has run out of fresh ideas. I just don't think it knows what people want yet, and it's experimenting. And that's not a bad thing, so we'll see where it goes later.